What happened at the May 5th, 2025 Lansing City Council meeting, you ask? I'll tell you. Council starts a letter-writing campaign. To federal Congress, please don't tax municipal bonds. We prefer to use taxpayer dollars not to pay more taxes. To state Congress, please consider allowing red light speed cameras for automatic traffic enforcement. To the mayor, give more monies to the police and fire departments. Also, council takes action, approving new zoning rules allowing for auxiliary dwelling units. Welcome to What Lansing Council, a podcast transforming Monday night's Lansing City Council meetings into an enthralling recap. I'm your host, Jill Dombrowski, and today my very special guest is Virginia Chambers. She has worked for the city of Lansing as a communication manager, and she now has the same title with the Michigan House of Representatives. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
So great to see you today.
Great to see you too on this rainy day.
Rainy.
We are soggy.
I was coming here and I saw somebody standing in the rain at a bus stop with no covered shelter, and I really thought that should be in the budget.
I almost took the bus in to work today, and then I was like, tough to stomach. Yeah.
No,
not great.
So what do you think of Lansing? How would you describe it in your own words?
I think actually a previous guest on the podcast did it really well by saying DIY, but to not plagiarize, I think I would say under the radar. I think that Lansing flies a little under the radar to our benefit and detriment.
Yeah.
I always say, like, you can come to Lansing and meet very cool people, like doing funky things, have a great time, and not, you know, it's not New York City. It's not like everything costs $1 million and you can take some risks. But also sometimes I think Lansing then struggles to get the recognition it deserves because we're not Detroit or Grand Rapids. So
no one's looking at us.
Exactly.
Look over here.
Exactly. Set your eyes to the capital city.
Yes, for sure. That's very well put. I like that. And what's something that you really like about Lansing?
Honestly, I like its under the radarness, but I love its size. I feel like we are just a great size to, like, you can wrap your arms around it pretty quickly. But you can also know your neighbors. And we also have the benefit of our neighbor, you know, East Lansing. So I feel like we get all of the cosmopolitan things that come along with a huge research university, but get to be a little chill. I think we have the best of both worlds in some ways.
Yeah,
so,
really well positioned.
Yeah.
That's great. And what do you not like? What would you like to see changed?
I moved here without a car, and getting north to south in Lansing on the bus line is really tough.
Oh, man.
Really tough. So would love to see a little bit more connectivity. I know this is a popular gripe, but I do very well, but Kata does very well by me usually. But sometimes I'm like, oh, man. Trying to go from the top of Lansing to the bottom of Lansing, that can be tough.
That's good feedback. I know you'll speak on your own behalf.
So true.
So
very true.
This is not the voice of the city or the House.
But if either of them want to adopt my beliefs, they are welcome. Yes. These are up for grabs.
We're in the midst of the budget review at the city. What is your thoughts on the budget?
I went to a budget planning meeting. I went to a community meeting about the budget a couple years ago, and I did not realize until I got there how many, like, I can't remember what the actual word is, but how many costs there are that are just, you can't really do anything about them, right?
Yes.
Like, we're paying pensions, we're paying benefits, we're paying all of those things. So encumbered costs maybe is the right word.
Ooh.
I don't know. So I was really surprised at, like, how little flexibility there actually was in the budget. My time at the city told me, like, everyone is doing what they can and no one has quite as much money as they need to make it all run. So
yeah.
I'm curious to hear what departments are saying about what they need for the budget. I'm sure that not everyone's going to get everything that they want, but, you know, it's always cool to hear, like, okay, what would be good?
Right. So. Yeah. That's a good segue. We are at the May 5th, 2025 council meeting, committee of the whole, and then the regular meeting. And present at the meetings, we have our president, Ryan Cost of the 1st Ward, Jeremy Garza, the representative of the 2nd Ward, Adam Hussein from the 3rd Ward, Brian T. Jackson of the 4th Ward. He came late from work. He said they started at 5 p.m. because I think these budget meetings have been running over. They started at 5. He couldn't quite make it, but he did make it about halfway through the committee of the whole. Also, our at-large members are Jeffrey Brown, Trini Pelivanoglu, Peter Spatafor, and our vice president and at-large council member Tamara Carter was absent, but her absence was excused, so 7 members present. Budget presentations. Most of the presentations we heard 5 departments were modest increases with position reclassifications and inflation on parking, IT, these sorts of things causing the majority of the changes. The first presentation was from the Human Resources Department. Elizabeth O'Leary is the department head. She had her deputy director, Kyla Moore, give the presentation. She was a little timid reading off her notes, but she did great. They have a budget planned at $2.7 million. That's a 7% increase from last year. No questions from council.
Okay.
Yeah. Next was the district courts, our judicial branch, 54A, I believe, and Anitha Brewer is the court administrator. She was there speaking on their behalf. She looked spectacular. She had this button-up collared dress with a full skirt. It had a printed, branches pattern on it, and then, pink flowers, big flowers at the cuffs and on the end. So I was very impressed. She was looking amazing. And she was very passionate about the district court and their budget. For those wondering, our city district court, they're handling criminal misdemeanors, civil claims up to $25,000, landlord-tenant disputes, traffic violations, and city ordinance violations. Other things are handled at the county level or up. So their proposed budget was $6.3 million, and that's just a 5% increase from last year. Something that they were talking about, though, was so for the last few years, they've been working on an eviction diversion grant-funded program. And I wasn't quite sure if this was funded through the state or the federal monies, but they were very passionate about this, and it's been used as a national standard, and this year ends their funding. But they have worked with over 2,000 families in Lansing, hand in hand with the Financial Empowerment Center, to keep people in their homes. And they asked for a budgeted person to run this program, but that was denied. Please, council, reconsider.
Ooh, that seems like a big loss.
I was really surprised by this because that seems like an issue that council really is championing. That. Yes.
We're all really into it. How had it been run previously?
I think through these state grants.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that they're state or federal grants, so that was ending, and they want to keep this going. They've seen results from this.
I thought that program was doing really well. I think it's such a great idea, especially with our Financial Empowerment Center. Talk about something that's under the radar, but that would be a real shame. Okay.
Yeah. No questions from council. There we go. Next, Downtown Lansing Inc. Kathleen Edgerly with a fuchsia cotton blazer was there talking about their $2.7 million proposed budget, up 42% from last year. But I think a lot of that from their department operating budget is from a Michigan Economic Development Corporation grant that they got. But that grant money was in the budget. I don't know. It was a little unclear what was going on with them. They were talking about how things are great. With the combined sewer overflow projects, they are really advocating for upgrades to the sidewalk design. So that's good. No questions from council.
Oh, that's surprising.
Maybe there's some background, I'm sure, discussions of all of these things. So.
Well, I guess, right. Okay, so if it went to $2.3 million, probably it's they got $1 million grant from the MEDCs. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting. Good for them.
Yes, good for them.
Great.
Then Brian T. Jackson arrives. Nice to see you, Brian. The Treasury and Finance Department was next, and these are now both being managed by Crystal Thomas. She said she has only been doing the Treasury for the last 5 weeks, so bear with her. She had a beautiful deep salmon silk shirt with puffy cuffs and a tan sleeveless dress over it. And she spoke very clearly and confidently. The Treasury Office has a $3 million budget, up only 6% from last year, and the Finance Department has a $2.5 million budget, up 17.3% from last year. During her presentation, the recording secretary, Sherry Boak's computer started playing some loud audio, and she very quickly apologized, grabbed her computer, and scuttled out of the room.
A little local color.
You got to mute that computer, Sherry. She also had a very nice outfit. She had a cream button-up shirt with colorful flowers outlined in navy. I didn't get like a real close-up look at it, but it was nice. When she came back in, President Cost passed her a note. And she had a little chuckle.
Drama.
Antics. Council did have some questions for Thomas about the Treasury and Finance budget. I guess at one point last year, credit card reimbursements for city folks were like 5 months behind. And they were like, what is happening with this? She really apologized, and she said there was one staff member who handled that, and they were out unexpectedly for a while, but they're working to add some redundancy into that process. And then I guess a bunch of W-2s were incorrectly written.
Yes. I received a corrected W-2 from the city of Lansing.
Oh, okay.
And I have received my return back, so presumably it was all ironed out.
Great. And that's what she said. She said the vendors set up the wrong codes. We're all good there. The internal auditor asked if the hybrid working style is impacting efficiency. So I guess a lot of people in these departments can do work from home.
That is news to me. Fascinating.
Were you able to work from home from the city?
I was in the office 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week, serving the people of Lansing.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Well, you know what? I will say that I think flexibility, if we were talking about Lansing as an employer, particularly when the state has a lot of work from home options, we got to think about it. But certainly have to think about efficiency. So it's a real balance.
And Thomas was saying that, yes, efficiency for the better. People seem more focused when they're at home, and they feel bad for not coming to the office, so they work harder.
If that's true, great.
President Koss said, what is the percentage of folks working hybrid? She said 50 and 60% across the various departments. Garza said, were those credit card reimbursements so far behind because folks were working from home? And she very patiently answered this question that she had already explained.
Talk about redundancy.
Good for her. Then there were a bunch of board reappointments that were lumped together in one resolution for reappointment. And those must have been read in full. I think that was a rule because President Cost apologized at the get-go for butchering many last names, and then he did. Councilmember Jackson jumped in, and he said, I'm okay with all of these except for the Board of Water and Light reappointment. Nothing against this person personally, but he's dissatisfied with the BWL board as a whole. He thinks they are not doing a good job of ferreting out what BWL is really up to. They're just going along with whatever the general manager proposes. And the BWL board is one board in the city with real power. Most boards are advisory, but these folks actually can make some changes to what's happening at BWL. Jackson says that the board isn't representing the people well. They're making a lot of decisions he knows the majority of folks would not support, and he's very disappointed that they built a natural gas power plant after saying they were committed to clean energy alternatives.
Not great.
Yes.
Not great.
Not great.
But does disallowing this person from joining the board fix these problems?
No, but it's like one action the council can take.
That's true. Do they have the power to yank people from the board?
It's the mayor is the one. I'm pretty sure.
Interesting. Okay.
Because, like, the mayor suggests people to be appointed.
Right.
They come before the council. The council says yes or no.
Right.
And then they get on or not. But they can't, like, pick new people or anything. It's just through the mayor. That is a good question, though. I don't know if the mayor can take somebody off.
Right. I almost wonder if the mayor could say, here's who I want to take off, and then council up or down votes that as well. So there's still the council check. But
yeah.
Because I would be curious to know if that has been an avenue looked at, if there are problems with the whole board. Like maybe the board chairman.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
That's examined. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Something to look into. But 6-1, the reappointments go through. Sorry, Jackson.
Tough luck.
Thanks for sharing your opinion.
Yeah. Sometimes it goes like that.
Yes. Then council was talking about how they want to write a letter to the federal legislator, urging them to preserve the tax-exempt status of municipal bonds. So the city can borrow monies for things like new public safety complexes, and they do not have to pay higher interest rates because they'll be taxed on the interest. And all these projects that the city does are being funded with tax money, so let's not pay taxes on taxes on taxes, I guess.
Agree.
Yeah, so that's something. Jackson was kind of annoyed with the way that the letter was written. He says, in one place, we're talking about monies used for roads and sewer upgrades, which everyone in the city would likely support. But in another place, we're talking about the Ovation Center, public safety complexes, which votes have been more complicated towards, and like attitudes at large have been a little bit more complicated. Brower, Chief Strategy Officer Brower, defending the writing, says, well, all these projects will be affected, so they're all in there.
Sure, I do think the public safety complex is interesting because wasn't that on the ballot a couple of years ago? So
yes.
In some ways, that's one of the more direct things that taxpayers,
have
at least
a voice
voters,
on.
Right, exactly, have had a voice on. I mean, certainly not everyone and probably no one agrees with every single thing that the city does, right? So
right, yes. And is Jackson like polling every single person? Like, how does he know everyone's opinions? Fourth Ward opinions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Then there was an hour break between the meetings, which was a long time. A lot of amicable chit-chat happening.
Great.
In the gallery. Some city council hopefuls talking to each other. I tried to chat up one of the mustached security guards. What does he think about the new city hall project? He was like, I hope to be out of this job before that happens.
Radical honesty. That's fair.
He wants to move to the state police, so good luck, that guy. The clerk had a new intern working at this meeting, was her first one. She did great, greeting the public. I also was standing there chit-chatting, so I did some greeting of the public.
Why not? It's a group effort.
I gave them my number one advice, which is if you sit in the seats right behind the public comment stand, you're going to be in the city TV shot.
Crucial intel.
So
yes.
if you want that, go
be aware.
For it.
Right, exactly. Control the facial expressions.
They appreciated that, so you're welcome. Chris Swope arrived in resplendent spring tones. He had peppermint pink pants, thick linen shirt with a blocky cornflower blue daisy pattern, and two-toned blushing coral and mahogany cap-toe Oxfords.
A touch of class for
Yes.
Lansing City Council.
So nice to see you, Clerk Swope. The mayor shows up at the very last public comment. So for the last 2 minutes, there was a police event on the Capitol grounds he was attending. His staff member, Mark Lawrence, was there on his behalf.
Duty calls.
Mark didn't have that much to say. The regular meeting began. President Cost warns that there may be some cannon fire from the police event.
Good warning.
Yeah.
Because that would be very scary.
It did happen.
Oh, my.
Yes. The public comments at this meeting, we had Joan Nelson and a representative from the AARP and a representative from the Immigrant and Refugee Resource Collaborative are speaking out for the proposed zoning changes to allow for auxiliary dwelling units.
In favor?
Yes. They want
Excellent.
us to be able to build our ADUs, put our mother-in-laws in there. And these zoning changes pass unanimously 7-0.
Fantastic.
Yes. Other comments are in support of the red light speeding technology due to recent South Martin Luther King Jr. crashes. People had a lot of comments about this. We need to do something. These races people are driving unsafely on these trunk lines. The commenters had some privacy concerns, so let's make sure there's due process for the people having their photos taken by the red light cameras.
Certainly. Also, tie in more north-south buses can get people off the roads into the buses.
Yes.
Typically, buses are not drag racing, so let's get creative here, people.
That is an excellent suggestion. Someone called the flashing light speed sign a joke.
Well, talk about shame, because sometimes they'll get me and I'm like, oh, I have been chastened. So I think that they can be helpful.
Yeah.
But I think the people who are drag racing are probably not going to be deterred by those signs.
I think there's a psychological component there in the way people react to those. I try very hard to not be a criminal on the roads. And so
Excellent.
I'm driving the speed limit, and I really appreciate the signs that say your speed, and then they say thank you for driving safely.
Those are nice.
I love it.
Those are nice. And there are times when I do drive past them and I'm like, well, this is not what my speedometer says. And so I do wonder how accurate they are. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I do not think that they can be the only solution.
Right. Yeah. A commenter said, I call the police to complain about stuff and no one ever gets back to me. We need more police officers. We need more park staff. In the 70s, there were 50 people working at the parks. Now there's only 8. We need to get our park staff numbers up and our police staff numbers up.
Is that true?
I think Bonero fired like a bunch of parks staff. Like a lot of park stuff is being contracted out. Like a lot of park staff is seasonal. So I think like the full-time numbers, that might be it. But yeah.
Not great.
Another commenter said, please don't rubber stamp the mayor's budget. We have real quality of life problems that we need to be focused on. Police, fire, city services. The rest needs to be pared down. Someone else said, we need to protect folks in Lansing, like our students and our citizens. We need it to be a welcoming city. Someone else said, we need a community center in the 2nd Ward. That's our southeast area. They said we have Fenner Nature Center, but that's not enough. That's not a real community center.
I would definitely agree. I love Fenner. It does not serve the same purpose as a community center.
Yes.
So if you're looking for a community center, Fenner is probably not going to fill that need, lovely as it is.
Clerk Swope said for Landstronauts in Eaton County, that's just west of Waverly, there is an election tomorrow. It includes a public safety millage. There was some chatter at the break about this millage. Folks seemed supportive of it. All the crime going on in Eaton County.
Yeah, the first thing I think of when I think of Eaton County, crime-ridden. Just kidding. I think it's a lovely place to live. But to be fair, I do not live in Eaton County. So I'll be curious to see what the voters of Eaton County have to say.
Yeah, we'll have an update on that next time. Council discussed the red light traffic cameras. So they're thinking about writing a letter, this one to the Michigan legislature, asking them to support allowing for traffic camera. The camera sees the cars. It knows how fast they're going. And if you're going too fast, it takes a picture of your license plate or whatever, and it sends you a ticket. Just automate that process of catching people running red lights and speeding. I think it can do both of those things.
I think so, too. In my hometown, not in Michigan, they started using this outside of schools, like in school zones, to catch people who are speeding there. And they have made quite a lot of money just automatically ticketing people who are not paying attention. Yeah. So that's obviously at a pretty specific area. I would be curious how widespread it would be in Michigan, but I didn't realize actually until the last episode of this podcast that they weren't allowed in Michigan at all. So definitely interesting to allow municipalities to get to it. Because I do think speeding is a pretty big issue that is universal. Like, people like to drive fast. Yeah. And people do have a problem with police officers being the ones enforcing that. Right. Because there can be a lot of racial profiling that goes on. Councilmember Hussein mentioned that. He also said 23 states and the District of Columbia allow this sort of thing to happen, these cameras, this passive traffic enforcement technique, and studies have shown reduction in accidents and a benefit for like law enforcement to do other stuff. Councilmember Jackson says, I want to support this, but I want to caution that I have seen other studies that show an increase in accidents when this goes into effect. Oh, fascinating. Let's do our homework, everyone. Sure. Share your research, Jackson. Yes, I would actually love to hear from all members of council where they're getting their sources. Yes. It sounds shady, but I'm really curious. Yes. Like, what are we seeing and where are we seeing it? Yes, that would be very interesting to hear. However, Jackson still voted yes for the letter because it's just a letter in support. Then council discussed asking the mayor's office to increase funding for police and fire departments. And they want to do this by encouraging the mayor to open up more positions. And Garza was championing this. He says, we're below our recommended staffing levels for our population for those departments. Spatafor supports it. He says we can take money from other places. Jackson says, I want to support this, but we already have staffing shortages in those departments. We already have positions that we've approved that we haven't been able to fill.
we don't need to just make more positions.
Right.
We need to come up with another idea, like giving them more money.
Right.
And then he kind of goes off on like, but the charter doesn't allow council to do that directly. Like everything has to go through the collective bargaining process.
Oh, of course.
So it's not straightforward of a idea.
Have there been conversations in the past about what the challenges of hiring for police are?
Yes, the police and the fire department chiefs have already given their budget presentations, and council did ask them a lot of questions, and they're like, we have training programs, we're working hard to get people into those training programs. It's just taken them a while to like figure out how to do that.
Sure.
But it's something that both departments, I think, are actively focused on.
Okay. Because it almost sounds like a pipeline and hiring issue and less if we have open spots, right? How can we fill the open spots?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Garza likes to talk about how we can't keep people. They're always going off to like easier, cushier jobs
Right.
in DeWitt and East
Right.
Lansing and
As the market allows. Yes.
I mean, but that's just
Right. That's just kind of how it goes.
how things happen. And that was the meeting. Yeah.
Relatively efficient.
It was. It was nice. What do people not know about the city that would be beneficial to them?
I think people don't know how much the city does. I see and hear all the time, what are my tax dollars going to? Why are we paying an income tax?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll say something and I'm like, oh, well, do you know about this pilot program? Or do you know about this grant that the city recently got and what they're doing with it? Do you know about the eviction diversion? And people are like, wow, that's actually really cool. I had no idea. And
Yeah.
that, I think, in some ways is just the challenge of any communication, right? Like
Yes.
any government, any business, any group.
Yeah.
So that is something I would certainly love for like any individual to get their Lansing Living in the mail when you receive it and look on that first page. I know that they have all of the social media handles of like all of the entities for the city.
Yeah.
Check them out. There's
Yeah.
lots of cool sustainability things going on. There are lots of interesting initiatives that the mayor's office is championing. There's lots of things from Health and Human Services and, you know, even Finance and Treasury puts out stuff. The Financial Empowerment Center, I can't say enough good things, but you know, kind of a classic thing. Everyone who is a Lansing citizen, can receive free financial counseling.
Amazing.
Which is nuts. Like,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. And that is something that Lansing has been a real trailblazer on across the nation and compared to other cities across the nation.
Wow.
And that is something that when I tell people that, usually they're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard of that. So
Now you have.
exactly. Right. PSA. But thinking about where you can get involved with your community, and I will admit the website can be tough. So figuring out how you can hear about things outside of the website, I think social media is a good place to start.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. What you look at, what you choose to put your attention on,
Right.
that's what you know about what is going on. So people do have to like make a decision that they will look at this. This is something that I care about. I'm going to like learn more. And it's not that hard.
It's not that hard, but you have to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think about it.
Yes.
So
yes.
Seeking out information about the city. I think if you seek it out, you can often find information.
Yeah, good call. And what have you learned about the state in your role that maybe was surprising or could be helpful for others?
This may have been happening before the pandemic, but definitely since the pandemic, many of the committees and subcommittees are streamed live online. And so you can tune in and you can see, any person can sign up for alerts to see, okay, when is the appropriations committee meeting and what's on their agenda?
Mm-hmm.
So if you really care, you can get involved, and any member of the public can submit a card in support of or against something that's up in committee. So you can speak on behalf of organization. Certainly, you know, government professionals do that all the time, or government relations professionals do that all the time. But if you are just an individual who cares really strongly about this tax bill or something, you can put up a card in support. You can come and try to testify as well. So there are elements to get involved. Certainly starting with your state legislators is a great place. But if for whatever reason that doesn't work for you, you can get involved just on your lonesome.
Nice. You have the power.
Exactly.
To put your voice out there.
Exactly.
And do they listen? Who's listening?
Who is listening? So definitely depends which avenue you're taking, right? I will say that DMs on social media, maybe not the best way. So it works for some people, but it's not always as frequently monitored.
Okay.
But, emailing a legislator, sending a letter, certainly if you live in Lansing. Also, you can come and tour the Capitol. The Capitol is open weekdays, but also I believe now the first Saturday of the month. So you can come take a tour.
Yeah.
The House office building also is open. So you have to come and, declare who you're going to be seeing and go through metal detectors. But you can come and talk with your legislator or their staff face to face. You can hand deliver something if you wanted to. So legislators are listening. Members of committees will hear you if you come to committee. The governor has a correspondence outfit. You can send her letters, and she shares a lot of letters and correspondence on social media. So there are folks, whether the legislator or the staff, who are listening and who want to hear what people have to say. And I do think being in the capital city, we are a little bit luckier because we're closer in. But we we have great legislators representing us who do listen to constituents. So
good.
Check out who you've got and give them a ring.
That's great to hear. What's a committee that you find interesting at the state level?
Government operations is a really interesting committee because it is often where the most random stuff goes. Okay. It's where a lot of bills go to die. It's where a lot of bills get sent when whoever's in charge does not want to deal with them.
It's like a catch-all.
It is kind of like a catch-all.
Okay.
So you never really know what's going to come up in GovOps.
Oh, yeah.
So that's always kind of funky. There's often, that's where a lot of the drama happens, and that's where a lot of the back and forth will happen.
Nice.
So that's a good one.
Okay.
If you're just getting involved, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to put down the reality TV for this week, I'm going to tune into the legislature, start there.
Yes.
So
reality legislature.
Exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Do you have anything, organizations or events you want to give a shout out to?
Not a City of Lansing entity, but shout out to the local library.
Yeah.
Yes, they are an integral part of the city and obviously a big part of downtown right now and hopefully in the future. So shout out to the local library.
Yeah. Capital Area District Libraries. Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Virginia.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
Really appreciate you being here, talking to me. Thank you to the Public Media Center for letting us record with you. Thank you all for listening. And do you have a Lansing friend who wants to know more about local government? Consider sharing this amazing podcast with them. Wait. So, sorry, Virginia. I forgot to say the best joke when we were recording, but I'll say it here. Finally, the cannons did go off, and it was while Councilmember Jackson was trying to make a point. And he said, and if you agree with me, shoot off a really loud gun. Ha ha ha. So, good joke, Jackson.